Hello, welcome back to Interesting and Sexy, a podcast dedicated to spreading the awareness and visibility of intersex people, as well as discussing issues/experiences about queer life being different and all other things interesting and sexy. I'm really pumped for today. We've got another awesome guest, of course. Their name is Justin, and I'm going to let them do all of the talking because, it's a really good episode. And Justin is a really powerful activist in the US and is doing lots of really cool stuff. So I'm going to let them tell you all about it. Hi, Justin. Welcome.
Hello. I'm excited to be here, but also a little bit nervous.
Oh, no, it's okay. Don't be nervous. Very chill. It's just a chance for you to talk about whatever you want to talk about. And I'm really happy to have you on. Thank you for joining us. So you're in the States right now. So we're doing this time difference, time zones and stuff like that. But do you want to introduce yourself first and tell us a little bit about yourself? Who is Justin? What is Justin about? And how do you identify?
Awesome. Yeah, my name is Justin. I use he, they pronouns. I just turned 28 last month, and I live in Los Angeles.
Happy birthday.
I am a person with many hats. I am a board member with Interconnect, which is a nonprofit for intersex folks in the US, providing support, education, and community. And I also do some freelance intersex activism. So sometimes I participate in panels or speaking events. But in my day job, I am a transportation planner in Los Angeles. So I do a lot of cool things on both sides. I think in the future, I'm hoping to kind of intersect these both fields and getting my master's in state planning as well as a master's in public health or health administration.
Wow. Awesome. Yeah, it really sounds like you're doing a lot. And I know you're really involved in the intersex community in the US, and which is great. There's so much stuff I feel going on for the intersex community in the US. And I feel everyone knows each other and everyone's like always hanging out and stuff. So yeah, I'm a little bit jealous. It sounds like it's all popping off over there.
Exactly. Yeah, we had a lot of activists in last month's Intersex conference with Interconnect, so it was such, a fun time.
Nice. So talking about being intersex and being involved in the community, if you would like to, would you want to speak about what kind of intersex variation you have and talk a little bit about how it works for you individually?
Sure. So I was born with XY chromosomes, and I have perennial hypospadias. But also I'm kind of currently in figure out quote unquote limbo with two other intersex variations, which is 5-alpha reductase deficiency as well as partial androgen sensitivity, PAIS. Hypospadias is pretty common. I believe it's 1 in 200 births. But mine is considered perennial, so it's kind of the least common type of hypospadias on that spectrum. And I had atypical genitalia, which kind of estimates to about 1 in 5,000 births. And so my urethral opening was basically located right near where the anus is, as well as the genitalia. And it was basically impacted by my hormone levels. And either my body didn't either respond to testosterone or had enough DHT or dihydrotestosterone. And so with my atypical genitalia, basically looking at other variations, and my endocrinologist believed I had PAIS, where my body doesn't respond to androgen as strongly. And this causes some variations in my genital traits, where it doesn't really fit the typical umbrella of male and female. But I'm also, when I did my exome genetic testing a few years ago, I am a carrier for 5-alpha reductase deficiency, which means that my body is missing a molecule. And 5-alpha reductase deficiency normally converts testosterone into DHT. So what this means is that my DHT levels are on the low end, kind of also like PIS, where there is variations in my genital traits, but there is usually like a kick in testosterone at puberty.
Wow, that's really fascinating that you have like multiple variations. And yeah, I'm not sure like how common that is, but it sounds even more cool and even more rare that
Yeah.
you have multiple. Um, do you want to take us on your journey of discovery and what that was like for you and how you found out and everything like this?
Yes, I think I certainly had a unique path compared to many others with hypospadias. I think my path was more like doing a puzzle. So there's like all these broken pieces, and I'm just trying to put them together. And so when I was born, I was born premature. So I was born very early, at 30 weeks gestation, due to some complications. And so my mom had to undergo an amniocentesis as well as a C-section. And when I came out, I weighed so small. I think
Oh my
I
gosh.
weighed around 1 pound, 13 ounces. And so because I weighed that small, I kind of had to be whisked away to the
Oh
NICU
my
to get
God.
all the breathing and eating tubes hooked up. And so while I was in the NICU, the neonatologist noticed that I had genitalia that kind of resembled a partially fused labia, and they did an ultrasound, and that kind of suggested a possible uterus, and it definitely led to confusion among the doctors. And so they had to get other doctors involved outside of the hospital.
Oh yeah.
So I live around 40 miles away from Los Angeles. And so the endocrinologist from Children's Hospital in Los Angeles drove 40 miles just to see me,
Oh my God.
to kind of see like, what's up.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And so he wanted to do some extensive hormone testing. He wanted to do a vaginogram, and he wanted to do several more ultrasounds. And so eventually down the line, he decided to diagnose me with perennial hypospadias, with PAIS, after ruling out other intersex variations, like mixed gonadal dysgenesis and uh, um, CAH.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's I'm blanking out on the
A
acronym.
CAH is congenital adrenal hyperplasia. Yeah.
Hyperplasia,
Yeah.
yes. And so with that, my parents had to face a really difficult choice. They were chosen to the neonatologist told me to raise me as female, but my endocrinologist suggested raising me as male.
Oh my
And
gosh.
so there was like this conflict on like, well, who am I going to be? And
Mm-hmm.
so eventually my parents decided to raise me as a male. I was put on testosterone upon discharge. So it's a mix of cream and injections for the first 4 years of my life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I also underwent surgeries immediately after discharge from the NICU. So the week after, I had to have surgery for undescended testes, as well as a bilateral hernia. And I definitely remember, going through multiple instances of these surgeries. I know my dad would wake me up like at 4 a.m. in the morning just to say like, "Hey, we're going somewhere." And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it was to the hospital in LA.
Oh my God.
Um, and yeah, I have pretty vivid memories of it. I
Mm-hmm.
also have memories of even after I think the second surgery, when I was urinating, blood came out,
Oh my
which was
God.
pretty, not healthy.
Yeah, not what you want to see, not what you want to experience.
No, 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 no. And so I think after all these surgeries, when I was around 17, I kind of discovered one of my medical records by accident. It
Okay.
was really meant for my school because I had a disability. And when I opened it, it mentioned that I was going to undergo, a quote unquote sex change.
Oh my
And
God.
back then I didn't know. I just thought I only had hypospadias and that was
Yeah.
it.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
But I felt like something else my parents were not telling me. And
Yeah.
so that was kind of a journey of, finding myself, finding the rest of my hospital records. So I thought I
Mm.
had one to two hospitals for surgery, but I had surgeries at four different hospitals in LA.
Mm-hmm.
So it took many years to get that.
Mm.
And so in my early 20s, I certainly struggled with UTIs and a lot of pain. I think it was likely due to all the nerve damage from these surgeries.
Mm. Oh my God.
And in addition, I found it very difficult to access um, specialized care
Mm-hmm.
for my past surgeries
Mm-hmm.
because I was operated on pretty extensively.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so up until a few years ago, I was like very isolated and always wondered like, are others like me?
Mm-hmm.
And so I was working with a disability nonprofit called the Asian Americans with Disabilities Initiative, and I was kind of developing the resource guide. And I was listening to a podcast from a disability advocate. Her name is Tiffany Yu, and she was interviewing a intersex activist, Alicia Wolf Weigel.
Mm-hmm.
And after I listened to Alicia's podcast episode, I was like, oh my God, I'm not alone.
Yeah.
Um, so it was like a breath of relief when I found
Mm-hmm.
out that news. And Alicia recommended joining Club Intersex, which is also based in LA.
Mm-hmm.
And so I joined Club Intersex, and that's how I found a community of fellow intersex folks.
Awesome. And so you were speaking how you were feeling before you found other intersex people, um, that kind of alienated, isolated feeling. And then going through everything that you went through, did you have any support at all?
Not necessarily. I think my parents were kind of quiet about my
Mm,
intersex variations,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
but they did acknowledge that um, you know, they kind of hid it because the doctors told them to not
Yeah.
tell me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think when I started meeting with community, I realized that, I'm not the only one who encountered this.
Yeah.
And so I just find, support within my community.
Amazing. Yeah, it's so important for that, and I like you felt, and I feel like every intersex person, you feel that this is only me that's ever going to understand this feeling, and then you just feel so connected to intersex people on another
Exactly.
level. It's just really special. So, upon learning and getting all of your medical records and diving into intersex as a topic and learning about that, and it could have happened like at whatever time, but did learning about intersex as a topic impact your perception of gender and sexuality and what you had thought up until that point?
Absolutely. I think when I started learning about my intersex variations, it definitely prompted me to kind of reevaluate, the notions of, gender and sex. Um, and it definitely made me question, that rigid binary of what is understood as only male and female. Because, because I was born intersex, my physical characteristics didn't really conform, to that traditional male and female binary. And so I think with these, unconsented surgeries and hormone treatments that were done to me, I was basically forced to fit into one box. And so my parents, were compelled to, make a difficult decision, even though it would come out to having, consequences for me in terms of, pain for myself long term, and also all the emotional struggles. And so I think, my body developed in a way where it defied, the traditional heterosexual norms, blurring the binary. And I think, this experience certainly shed light on that limitation of what society thinks of us, between, gender and sex. Um, and, I think, I when I learned about the different intersex variations, um, it certainly broadened my perspective on gender diversity, as well as how complex human biology is with
Totally.
chromosomes and reproductive anatomy, etc. But it also really helped me appreciate how everyone I've met who's intersex is very unique on its own. And so I felt that, my understanding of gender is really like a journey. It's really about both expression and identity. I think I've never really felt exclusively masculine or feminine, and felt kind of like right in between. And I think my intersex characteristics reassure me that it's okay to kind of embrace my characteristics. And so up until I think this year I've been kind of dressing more androgynously, and it's really been liberating to kind of express myself more authentically. And then just as my gender, my finding out that I was intersex really influenced my exploration of sexuality. And I think, right now I'm still figuring that path out because
Yeah.
it's pretty complex, how
Yeah.
I was growing up. But I understand there's never a rush, or there's not like a deadline to define what my sexuality is. It comes and
Yeah.
it just flows.
Yeah. That's really, really powerful. You talking about stepping into and experimenting with your identity and your self expression. And I love that you're starting to change the way you dress, and that's really empowering for you. That's really awesome to hear. And I know you've touched on some like pretty heavy things that have happened to you. Is there any specific challenges that were really significant for you, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, I think many of my challenges really started when I was very young. So probably around when I was a toddler, I noticed that my body was different than those around me, particularly with my brother. Those early moments where my mom was bathing me and my older brother in the bathtub, I think it kind of sparked a recognition that my genitalia didn't really resemble my brother's, and I noticed that mine was very visibly shorter and it was definitely shaped differently. And so I was definitely more aware of that. And so I think, as I grew older into puberty, my genitalia has not changed at all, even though they did all the testosterone treatments on me. And so I was certainly feeling afraid and shy, especially in school, about the different the 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 differences in my body,
Totally, yeah.
especially in PE, or physical education. And so I always had this fear of being judged or ostracized because of my physical intersex variations, which is, on top of the emotional challenges of being, fearful. And so I think when I obtained my medical records, I think that was a pretty significant step in knowing myself. Um, but it also kind of highlighted my sense of isolation in this unique experience. And so when I saw all these medical terms in my hospital records, I kind of felt alone, especially when there was this terminology that was not disclosed to me. So this term that I was seeing, this is no longer used in these days in hospitals, but it was the term quote unquote male pseudohermaphrodite.
Yeah.
And that usually describes folks who, are born with intersex characteristics.
Yeah.
And so I think I had this fear of disclosure and misunderstanding because I had like this concern that if I disclosed, I would feel that no one's going to understand or how to respond. And this particularly, would happen in school where I kind of feared gossip or rumors about me
Yeah.
if I ever told anyone about my body. And so I kind of added a whole nother layer of apprehension. And I believe that, I eventually overcame these challenges. It was, through a process of, educating myself and just being more open about my body. And so I think the past 2 years of being in the community, it really helped me in being supported and positivity and empathy that really kind of guided my journey as an intersex person. Um, and so I felt that, you know, just this year, I started to take more control of how I interacted with doctors. Usually, there's usually residents in the exam room, other university medical students, and I would just say, no, I don't feel comfortable with the residents being present. And I think that was pretty liberating that,
Awesome.
I am control of, how I wanted my treatment to be. And, in addition to all the decision making that I didn't have as a child. So basically, I just controlled my own narrative, on my terms.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I completely understand that power of being able to say no and how much that really feels liberating because not a lot of people are ever going to understand what intersex people go through, like the experiences that you have with doctors. That weird, I don't know if this was the same for you, but almost feeling like obligated when you were younger to let them have the people in the room, and you're going into these situations where, you know, you put so much trust in like this medical professional, and you're like, oh, okay, well, I have to kind of do what they tell me. And then you get this power and say, actually, no, I don't have to do that. And you're supposed to be taking care of me. And yeah, how about respecting my privacy and my autonomy?
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. And then also, I think in terms of overcoming all of these challenges, it's much easier to do, you know, as you grow older and, you know, leaving places like school where it's not built to protect intersex people. And those kind of institutions, unfortunately, are built to do the opposite and really enforce gender norms and stuff like this, which is why we as activists and advocates are trying to change that, because one day, I guess, we want people in school to know what intersex is from day one, so that that can just be a normal thing. I know that's kind of what drove me to be like an advocate, to change that. But do you want to talk about what, you know, really made you get into activism and want to advocate for intersex rights and visibility?
Yeah, I think it's mostly based on my own lived experience of um, not being understood, not really having a say in my treatment, the challenges of even accessing care due to varying insurances, um, and kind of, over time feeling numb to all these medical interventions where I kind of felt helpless. Um, and on top of that, there's like this layer by being questioned by regular society where we see stereotypes of, being that kind of leads to being judged and being misinterpreted. I think, society and the medical establishment portrays, intersex folks as well as disabled folks as a tragedy, that we have to be fixed. But I believe that everyone deserves, dignity, belonging, as well as, being valued in life. And so I kind of, struggled, my entire life, which kind of led me to feel like I was chosen to do something with a purpose. And so I was pretty brave in 2 years ago, I made an educational intersex awareness day post on my Instagram, where I wanted to educate others, so others knows about intersex issues, who are the activists that are out there in our community, how they can support our movement. And I think it kind of gave me some encouragement in possibly this post helping other parents deciding that they don't want their intersex newborn child to be harmed. And so that's kind of what motivated me to be an activist today.
Yeah. Awesome. And you just doing that initial post is, yeah, a very vulnerable place to put yourself in. I can completely relate, on that time where you're like, oh, am I going to go live with this? Am I going to like really put myself out there? And then you do, and then
Yeah.
the reception is
It was great, actually. It was overwhelmingly positive.
awesome.
There was a lot of support from both the intersex and disabled community. And I think that post went pretty viral. I think it gained like over 400 likes for the
Awesome.
first time. So I've like never had that many likes on my Instagram post before, but
Yeah.
seeing that, like, it truly showed that, folks really wanted to share and they really valued, what I was sharing and my story. And so I think I was incredibly thrilled that I could help folks that day.
Yeah, it sounds really powerful, and just that affirmation of having this good reception when you're doing something so scary, it just makes you feel this is what I'm supposed to be doing, and I can completely relate. Has advocacy contributed much to your personal growth and healing as an intersex person?
Let's see. I think, for a significant time, I was really ashamed when I talk with others about my intersex traits. I kind of felt really closed off in terms of, you know, sharing, what I wanted to share. But I think ever since I started sharing my experiences in the community and then to families and then eventually medical students, um, I suddenly felt a sense of fulfillment that others wanted to kind of follow and pass along, that you shouldn't be doing these harmful, unconsented, um, unnecessary surgeries that's been happening to intersex folks. And so I think, with doing intersex advocacy, it reminds me that I'm in a community where I'm no longer alone in my experiences.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can't talk about how important having the community is enough, because when you have that community, it's life changing. In that community, you find support in ways that you just don't find in the medical field. You're not getting the same sort of support that you're getting from this community-based stuff. How important to you are these support works and communities, and what impact have they had on your journey?
I think I think that the importance of support and community spaces um, have been really essential for my healing as well as my way of finding community. Um, I feel that it provides a safe and understanding environment to kind of heal from all the challenges I've faced, due to evil society, misinformation, or the ways that doctors have interacted with me. I think that many intersex individuals, they're constantly told to keep their intersex variations a secret, and I think that kind of induces this internalized shame,
Absolutely.
in which they would feel more isolated and even more confused about themselves. And so I think, on my own journey, when I discovered Club Intersex, I first kind of was feeling apprehensive, like, will I fit in? Would people think I'm a quote unquote freak? Will I ever be accepted? And so when I attended, my first meeting, I was certainly feeling welcomed and acknowledged. And so I, was able to open up in terms of sharing my story. I could feel comfortable in being myself. I was able to use, the pronouns I wanted. And so I think it kind of over time established a special bond, especially when sometimes we have these occasional in-person meetings. And it simply just powered these connections, where we had like this shared mutual understanding of how we're on our healing journey, and we're here to all support each other, and kind of it felt really authentic. I think for many intersex folks, there's always a sense of rejection because of the intersex traits, in places they're not comfortable with. But I think with spaces like Club Intersex, it really provides an opportunity to be authentic, without being in fear. And so I think these experiences, it definitely creates a sense of life fulfillment, that kind of was missing for many folks in in childhood, where they don't naturally meet intersex folks.
Yeah.
And just the past month, I attended my first intersex conference, and that was in person. I've met over 100 intersex folks in the US,
Nice.
and it was an amazing time. We had really like sharing our experiences with each other, our different perspectives, meeting folks from different age ranges, or kids all the way up to more older adults, and so it kind of brought the sense of unity among
Mm.
intersex folks who are coming from a wide variety of backgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
It basically, had allowed me to feel part of something greater than myself.
Mm.
Um, and it created all these lasting memories. There's like these unforgettable moments where these activities like karaoke with intersex friends was so much fun.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
I just remember just like singing with Pitch and Begonis and Alicia Weigel, but just like being us true selves and having a great time.
Mm.
And I think that's kind of what, community is all about for me. It's
Mm.
really providing a place, to heal, a place to connect, and, celebrating our own selves. And so I think my personal journey certainly was transformed through all these experiences,
Mm.
and just having this mutual understanding um, of all these intersex folks with different lived experiences.
Oh, I'm so happy to hear that, and changing that narrative in your life from something that's isolating and upsetting and into something where you're creating the best memories of your life.
Yeah.
I always say nowadays, like, being born intersex was literally the best thing that could have ever happened to me, and it's like one of the favorite things about my existence. So I'm really happy to hear that you've had this experience, and that you're living this really empowering life right now where you're feeling loved and accepted and connected. It's beautiful to hear. I know not everybody has that or has that yet. There might be young intersex people listening to you right now, or even older intersex people listening to you right now who maybe have come across this in some obscure way and they don't have their community yet. So can you share any advice to people like that would be listening? Any advice or suggestions for people who are seeking in creating those support networks and finding that and stuff?
Definitely. I think for the US, I am a board member of Interconnect, and we do provide peer support groups, virtual support groups every other week. And it also includes parent support groups as well. And so I think next year we are holding regional hangouts in the US, where we're going to have a more, closer experience where new and existing intersex folks in the community can have support and fun and education, all within, places that are easy to reach. Because
Mm,
usually in our national conferences in the past, we would usually have to travel far distances. And I think it's not really that financially feasible for some folks. And so this next upcoming year, we're going to create a really interesting experience.
mm,
And then with Club Intersex, it's a much smaller community that's also community run. It's through the LA LGBT Center, and we have a whole bunch of activities as well as interesting discussions. And so that is happening the first and third week of the month on Thursdays,
mhm,
particularly 6 8:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time.
Mm-hmm.
And the hosts, Val, River, Gallo, and Jessica Book, do an amazing job at running the group, in addition to our other community members who volunteer. And then lastly is Interact. They are an intersex policy nonprofit, but they do have online hangouts that is exclusive to folks under age 29. And so sometimes we do, fun events for that group as well.
Mm.
So there are a lot of choices, not in the U.S., but also internationally as well. There's OII groups throughout the world, and they usually have a lot of resources too.
Mm. Yeah, nice. I think it's just finding these organizations and then just reaching out to them, I guess. And the good thing is you're always going to be welcomed with open arms, and everyone is going to be super excited to meet you and hear your story and create a safe space for you. So, yeah, I think it's
Yes.
an amazing thing to put out there. There's lots of resources. Just find the email and reach out, and then there's people waiting for you. Such a nice feeling. Um, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about representation with you, get your opinion and your thoughts on it. So what are your thoughts on the media representation for intersex in general? How can media portrayals in the future be more inclusive and accurate?
I think in the past, intersex representation was not really well represented. It was very pathologizing, as well as kind of disrespectful. But I think just this year, we're starting to see a lot of media representation of intersex folks that are, incredibly accurate and inclusive. For example, we just saw the release of Everybody. It's a documentary, and it's right now it's free on the Peacock platform if you're in the US. And I think it's a well-informed representation of who intersex folks are, how the movement started, and how we're feeling pride in ourselves. And so I think the activists, Alicia Weigel, Sean Cipher-Wall, and River Gallo, they are truly amazing activists that I've met, and I'm so glad they were in that film. Also, there's a more recent film. It's a short film that I think just came out. It's called As Common as Red Hair. And so intersex activist Kimberly Zieselman, who used to be the executive director of Interact, consulted the production of that film. And so I think it's a film about parents, raising an intersex child. And I think just today they just rolled out the film to a festival. So that's kind of
That's really
amazing.
exciting. Nice. Yeah. Okay. Well, I hadn't heard about that yet, so I'm glad that I know about this.
Yeah. And then River Gallo is going to be releasing the new film Pony Boy
Oh,
this year.
yeah. Okay.
I'm
Yeah,
really
I
excited to
had
see.
heard about that one. Yeah, I'm really excited because I feel it's the first film about an intersex person starring an intersex person, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what we need. Intersex characters played by intersex people.
Yeah. And River, if you're listening or watching this episode, I just want to give a shout out that you're awesome.
Yes. I've actually got River coming on one of these episodes coming up soon. We haven't got a date yet, but they said that they were keen. But yeah, River, if you're watching this, we can't wait to watch Pony Boy. So, what are your dreams for the intersex representation in the future? Like, what do you really hope that young Justin wished that they saw on TV or anywhere in the media?
Yeah, I think there could be, greater representation of intersex folks, whether that is acting, directing, producing, and even marketing team.
Mm,
I think we've been, invisible, marginalized, portrayed inaccurately for a long time. And so I feel like I really want to see intersex characters that are like kind of like multidimensional, where we're just seeing like more than just our traits. And
totally.
so I think because there are a lot of intersex folks in the world that have a whole host of lived experiences, I think that would really add some authenticity to that film. Um,
Mm,
but I think, with journalism, I think there's opportunities for journalists to educate themselves on intersex issues,
mm,
as well as intersex, language, so it's reported accurately
mm-hmm,
and is respectful of our community.
mm,
Um, and then lastly, I just want to mention that I want to see intersex folks in the media of all ages and backgrounds,
mm-hmm.
and as well as a diverse range of representations, including our indigenous community, our Hispanic community, our Black community, as well as our Asian community.
Yeah. Yeah, really very, very important to have these characters or these people easily represented in all fields. Just having really diverse people with diverse lives that just happen to be intersex as well, but also are just like everybody else because that's just how it is. I share similar hopes, I just want young people to know what intersex is and finding out about intersex from an early age and having characters they can look up to, people that they can relate to, and really
Yeah,
very
because I know that with the disabled community, they're just starting to include disabled folks, in the modeling industry.
mm,
And so before, you wouldn't imagine someone, in a wheelchair, doing modeling. But
mm,
now we have a whole variety of disabled folks, able to do modeling. And so
mm.
I also hope that we can have more representation of disabled folks in modeling as well.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
All shapes and sizes.
Yeah. Towards your future, and the future of intersex rights and visibility and the whole movement that we're working towards, where do you see the movement heading, and what role do you envision playing in that path forward?
I think ever since I've been involved with the community 2 years ago, I certainly see the movement moving more collaboratively, um, as well as collaboratively on an international scope. There are many allies in the trans community who are just starting to become aware of intersex folks, and they're also starting to build solidarity. I don't know if you've read Pigeon Begonis's book. She's called
Nobody needs to know.
Need to Know.
Yes, there it is.
Uh, It's such an amazing book. Pigeon, if you're listening, I love you too, and I love your book. But yeah, I think I think that there's also additional opportunities for the disabled community in building solidarity, especially against medicalization and informed consent.
Hmm.
There's a lot of disabled folks who work in health policy. And I also think that um, one way that the advocacy movement can improve is being more inclusive of folks who did not receive these interventions. I
Mm-hmm.
think a lot of the press and media often describes intersex folks with stories of folks who had these surgeries and interventions, but I think it would be great to see more folks who didn't have any interventions at all to come out and share their stories.
Mm.
I think that's kind of been missing in the press.
Totally, yeah.
And in terms of my role, I will continue to advocate for our community. I really want to focus on improving health outcomes for intersex folks, more on the policy kind of realm. I know that mental health is kind of a big struggle with the intersex community. There's like no framework, and so there's a lot of support and kind of you know a, we need to develop something from scratch that can be helpful for intersex folks, and unfortunately that doesn't exist yet.
Yeah. There's this really interesting thing going on in Australia right now, and it's like a support group called Interlink. You are put in a small group of people kind of close to your age in a nearby area, and there is a psychologist present. I'm taking part in it right now, and I've done 2 sessions, and it's still very new and being studied and stuff like that, but it's really exploring the mental health and psychology. But yeah, like it's amazing that this stuff is like starting to happen, and in like what you were saying, building that framework, from scratch, doing all of this work that we're doing as advocates and community work, and hopefully we can change that and make that framework, and because mental health is very, very important, and it's hard not to have an effect on your mental health when you've been through some pretty significant shit ever since you were a child, and dealing with that a lot on your own, with no one really knowing what's happening, no one really knowing how to support you properly, until you find those spaces. Yeah. Justin, you were awesome. Your answers were just incredible, and I thank you so much for coming on here today and sharing your story. Is there anything that you want to add as your final words?
Certainly. I post a lot of intersex content on my Instagram. If you follow me, JUST_TSANG, you can follow me there. And yeah, I'm really excited for the next year and see what new adventures happens with our community.
Amazing. Thank you so much. You really, really were awesome. I really loved having you on, and everything you were saying was just really powerful, and you're awesome, and I'm glad that we're friends now.
Hey. Thanks for having me.
Of course.